Today on Rabble TV, we're speaking with Iranian-Canadian CBC broadcaster Jian Ghomeshi. While Iranians are fighting for a free democratic society halfway around the world, Jian has been quite active here in Toronto. He's spoken at rallies on both June 14th and June 20th. His radio program, Q, airs at 10 a.m. Monday to Friday on CBC's Radio 1.
To a certain extent, this has never been about one election, but of course the election was a catalyst, and such a bold-faced catalyst, because it just seemed inconceivable that Ahmadinejad would have won the election by the kind of numbers that they were claiming, and so people suspected fraud. We still don't know exactly what the numbers are, but certainly it's gone from a situation that was perhaps a tipping point centered around the election, but about a lot more and bigger issues around democracy and freedom, and the right to assembly, etc. in Iran. And now it's truly become an issue of human rights, because of course there's been this horrendous crackdown on the rights of people. I mean, which is telling in itself, right? If it was a fair election,
these sort of things wouldn't be
how does one, in what case scenario do you prove that it's a fair election by kidnapping, beating, injuring, arresting, and killing people
on the street? Yeah.
So that's very telling in and of itself. In terms of the broader issues, I think that what Iranians are doing and why they're inspiring the world right now, especially Iranian youth, and I know we could talk about that, but is that in a broad scale they are speaking out against the undoing of democracy in the name of religion anywhere in the world. I mean, certainly in the theocracy in Iran, but really to a certain extent anywhere in the world. I think that's a distinct position from an anti-religious or an anti-theist position. We disagree with all religion. I think it's saying that dominion or religious leaders or a theocratic regime should not have dominion over us.
Because they could potentially use religion to oppress the people, which is sort of what's happening right now.
I mean, I think that's essentially using a loose interpretation of Islam to say you can't have any free speech, and we're going to shoot you in the streets.
So the situation in Iran, I was listening to a song by Mos Def yesterday, and the quote in the song sort of reminds me of what's happening in Iran. It goes like this: "Why did one straw break the camel's back? Here's the secret: there's a million other straws underneath." How long has the pile of straws in Iran really been building for?
Well, I think the pile of straws in Iran has been building since 1979.
Since the Islamic Revolution.
Well, and you call it the Islamic Revolution. It became the Islamic Revolution. It was a revolution. And to a certain extent, it was a liberal nationalist revolution. It was a workers' revolution. It was a populist revolution. One element of that, and a very effective element of getting the word across and prosecuting that revolution was the religious leaders, the believers, the mosque system of getting word around. It was very effective in terms of making the revolution happen. And to a certain extent, Ayatollah Khomeini was a figurehead. Wouldn't go so far as to say a mascot, but he was. Then it was co-opted. I mean, this is important for people to remember. That it wasn't at the time. I guess it maybe a population of 40-50 million Iranians demanding a religious Islamic republic. It was
away from the monarchy.
It was a demand for a democratic society, not unlike what they had in 1953 with Mossadegh before the CIA coup, and then it was co-opted by the religious formalists or the mullahs or the clergy, Khomeinists, etc. Since that time, and the crackdown at the time was so brutal. And people who helped make the revolution happen, liberal nationalists, professors, educators, students, many of them ended up arrested or killed or tortured, and many, of course, exiled, many as refugees. It ran very deep, and it was very difficult at the time to conceive of how to reverse this. I think there's been an inkling in all Iranians for 3 decades now
Yeah.
um,
That this was sort of
that at some point something's going to happen to
because this is not what we had in
because
mind.
this is not what anybody had in
Yeah.
mind, and add to that the fact that the majority of the population wasn't born
Yeah.
when the revolution happened, and do have access to ideas, images of what people their age are doing in other parts of the world that they're fighting for. And there's this popular bubbling desire for freedom, democracy, free speech, the right to an election, the right to assembly, all of the things that we continue to fight for. We don't always have here either.
Yeah,
We
that's
have to keep fighting for here. So, although I'm not comparing the Canadian situation to Iran, and so that to your point, that has all led to this moment where the floodgates were going to open at some point. And that's happened. That's happened.
It's interesting that you do compare what's happening now to what happened in '79, just because 70% of the population in Iran, about 70%, is under the age of 30, and the only way they know about what happened in '79 is through word of mouth and old news reports and that kind of stuff. And now this revolt right now is drawing parallels in that its ultimate goal is sort of the same, to free the people.
But and they may know that from news reports, but they also know how they live their lives. They also know that there isn't complete freedom in the streets. They know that when they were kids, or they probably have brothers and sisters or family that were involved in a devastating war with Iraq that lasted a few years and had 1 million people
in the 80s.
as part of its toll in the 80s. And into the 90s. I mean, this is, they're tapped in, right? I mean, I think a lot of people in the world are surprised that, when I've been on the internet with my cousins in Iran in recent years, we're talking about Radiohead. They know what's going on in the world. They also know they can't express some of what they believe or how they want to express themselves in the streets of Iran. So there was always a point, but I think the other important point to make is when you see at these rallies that are happening in Toronto and other places in the world, the level of agitation and emotion. The level of agitation and emotion, it's not just because these horrible events are happening in Iran right now. It's because they've been waiting for so long for something to happen that everybody wants to get it right. That everybody wants to make sure that the fight for democracy isn't being screwed up somehow.
So you do have family in Iran?
Yeah, I have.
Have you
family.
spoken to them recently, since this has started last 2 weeks ago?
My parents have been in touch with their brothers and sisters. I have a number of uncles and aunts there, and cousins, and yeah.
So have you? I've spoken
They're saying
to.
it's a difficult situation.
Because I've spoken to a lot of Iranian Canadians in Canada, some sort of exchange students from Iran, some with dual citizenship, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Have you? Do you? They said they feel sort of guilty was a word that I heard a lot, that they're not there right now to fight for an issue that's so close to home, being so far away.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way?
Yeah.
You feel guilty not being there?
I don't feel guilty not being there. I feel like
left out?
I want to do. I feel the same impulse that I see Iranians in around the world feeling, which is they want to do whatever they can to help.
If you were, just a question. If you were in Iran right now, would you be one of the people that is outside, sort of demonstrating, or is that sort of hard to say?
I would say, anybody who knows me and has looked at what I've done in my lifetime, I would say fighting for democracy and a just world is something that's interested and something that's always been paramount for me. So I think you draw your own conclusions about whether I would be involved.